Hey everyone, I'm Nick, and welcome to another episode of Learning Rust. Right, so this is a series where we get to learn a new programming language together. So, in this episode of the series, we're going to be taking a look at variables in Rust. And again, we're going to be continuing to use, cargo for building our applications and running our applications, and doing things like managing dependencies. So, we'll go ahead and open up source and main.rs. That's where our program is. So, from here, we'll have our first variable, right? So we have this let x is equal to 32. So generally in Rust, Rust is statically typed, and generally the types are inferred, right? So this is a lot like auto types in C++, where we don't specifically say if something's an int or not. We let the compiler figure it out. If we really wanted to, give this a type, we could say let x, I32 is equal to 32, right? Or say something like U32, right, if we want it to be unsigned or if we want it to just be an integer. So we could specifically give it a type, or we could just let the compiler figure it out, right? And if we want to print out a variable, right, we can use this curly bracket notation with print line. So we say the value of x is curly bracket, and then we can positionally put in, whatever we want to print out here. So this is a lot like, from my own personal experience, this looks a lot like Python's f-string as far as like formatting these prints. One other thing with these variables is by default, they're immutable, meaning that we can't change them. So we can't say, reassign the value of x to be, say 16 here, right? So, if we tried to do something like this, so if I go ahead and uncomment this x is equal to 16 here, we see if we try to compile this, we'd actually get an error, right? So if I go ahead and do something like cargo, run, if I just try to run the application, or if I do try to, something like cargo build, we see that it actually gives me an error here, right? So it says, warning, x is never read. So the first thing it says is, okay, we just reassigned it, but we never used it. But then later on, it gives us an error saying, pointing back to let x is equal to 32. So the actual error comes at line 11 where it says cannot assign twice to a mutable variable. And it even gives us a hint that, this is the first assignment to x, let x equal to 32. And if we want to be able to change this in the future, we have to change it to be mutable, right? So we can change just x is equal to 32 to let mut x, say, be equal to 32. So if we go back here, we can go ahead and comment this back out. And the next thing we'll have is a mutable variable. So this is one that we can actually change. So let mut y is equal to 16. So this in this case, we have no problem by, say, changing this, say y is equal to 10, right? This is fine because we've set y to be mutable. And then likewise, we can use these curly brackets in order to print things out. Now, the other type of variable that we have is we can also have this constants. Now, we don't need to use let with constants. We just need to use the const keyword and then max value. So max value is just the name of our constant, and then colon, then a type. So with constants, we have to give it a type. So here we're setting it to be U32, and then here we're setting it equal to be 100,000. Now, a cool thing with Rust is that, inside of these numeric literals, we can have underscores. So it can be pretty difficult if we have, say, a number like 100,000, right? So what number is this just by looking at it, right? So, we know it's 100,000, but, it's very easy to make the mistake if this is 10,000 or 1 million, especially if we start adding, zeros to this number, right? Figuring what that is, what number that is pretty hard. But if we can just put, something like, underscores in there, right? It's pretty easy to say, okay, thousands, millions, billions, right? So it's pretty easy to tell this is 1 billion, right? Versus, say, if we got rid of all the underscores, right? So being able to put underscores within these numeric literals, I thought that was a pretty handy thing. And we can print out constants the same way that we print out, things like our variables, that we use like our mutable ones and our immutable ones. We can print them out the same way using these curly brackets. All right, so let's go ahead and quit this, and then we can say cargo build -- release. If we want to go ahead and build optimize, and we can say cargo run -- release, right? So if we just did cargo run -- release without building it first, it would first build it then run it, or we could build it first then run it, and then subsequent times it won't build it because it's already built. And so here we see all the prints, right? So we see the value of x is 32, the old value of y is 16, the new value of y is 10, and the constant value, max value, is 100,000 here, right? So we see that we could put that underscore in there, but it doesn't change the actual value, right? It just makes it a bit more readable, when we're writing that code. Okay, so that's going to go ahead and do it for this video. As always, all this code can be found at github.com/coffeebeforearch. So if you want to, the source code for this or any of the other series and follow it, if you're following along, feel free to, check out that here. So here we're looking at variables, and then it's going to be under the source inside of this directory, and you can find this example. But that's going to go ahead and do it for today. As always, I'm Nick, and I hope you have a nice day.